Whoever you are, whoever you love, whatever your family looks like, whatever you look like, you are a living member of the great family of all souls, and you are welcome here. Come, let us worship together.
There goes my earring. It just flew across the thing up here. Greetings, hello, and welcome to All Souls Church. My name is Jana Owens, and I am today's worship associate. First, I think I should wish people who are attending via Zoom and here in the sanctuary, happy Father's Day. That includes fathers of fur babies as well as humans, to uncles, to mentors, to others who have been great father role models. Also, I understand we may have some visitors in the sanctuary who are here in the DC area for yesterday's Moral March for Poor People. If we have some of those people, if you can wave your hand or stand up and we can acknowledge you. And there may be some people here for Juneteenth in addition. We welcome you. We welcome you to a community where our search for spirituality, our passion for social justice and communal action, and a need to find respite, at times with others of similar mind and heart, where we can meet and mingle. Welcome to a place where all people are welcome at the table of love and fellowship. We gather here again, both in the sanctuary and virtually, remotely from various locations around the greater capital region and around the world, regardless of whether you're a longtime member of All Souls or someone who just happened to kind of stumble across us, or today is your first time with us, welcome. Now, for today's order of service, those who are here in the sanctuary, we have printed orders of service for you. If you did not receive one, you can wave and an usher can provide one for you. If you are attending via Zoom, there is a link in the chat window where you can obtain it. Now, to stay up on all of the activities and offerings of our church community, the best way to stay up with that is to read our weekly news bulletin. That usually goes out on Friday afternoons via email. If you're not currently subscribed, you can do so on the church website, or if you're attending virtually this morning, you can click on a link in the chat window. One other thing is, if you are here in the sanctuary, we ask that you do not log on to Zoom when you're in here because it creates a feedback problem with our audio. Not good. Now, life has changed a lot over the past few years, and our community, the way in which we worship and engage with one another, has obviously had to evolve. For example, we've always had our greeting here in the sanctuary. Now we have what we call beholding. So if you are here in the sanctuary, we invite you in just a second to get up and greet each other in a way that's comfortable to you yourself as well to those around you. If you are attending virtually on Zoom, we invite you to turn on your video if you haven't and scroll through the gallery view and wave at each other, and you can also text each other. And of course, remain on mute. So let's take a couple of minutes and let's behold each other. Everyone, let's continue our conversations after services. I understand we have some food in Pierce Hall afterwards, so hang around.
Good morning, All Souls. You'll see that there are some program notes in your orders of service today, but I am especially excited about some of the music we're presenting because it is about the poet Walt Whitman. This choir performed a whole program of work centered around Walt Whitman a couple years ago at the Kennedy Center. And part of what I loved then, and part of what I love now about this text today that we're about to sing for you, is all of the ways that Walt Whitman didn't think that language in his time was sufficient for all that people contained. The fact that he believed that all people could hold manhood, womanhood, infancy was just so marvelous and exciting, and the ways that he expanded language. I just think about that in the scope of the ways that we are able to understand language and identity now, and I think that he may have taken the first steps in helping all of us in learning about the different ways to approach identity. So in a Sunday, thinking about breaking out of boxes, it seems right and good to honor his work.
All righty, Jen is feeling uncaged and electric. Me too, yeah, such a fine line, uncaged, unhinged, yes. Hello, hello, all souls. I am Reverend Louise Green, Minister of Congregational Care, and I would like to give a shout out to our ASL interpreter, Kara, who does a heck of a job today. Welcome on a day when we celebrate Juneteenth freedom and the human capacity to be larger than any one category. Yes, how else can we live? We celebrate emancipation for all souls, and it's great to be here on a gorgeous morning. I know many people who were here for the march yesterday went home, and a few of you are here, and we're so glad. There are also a lot of visitors this morning, so if you are a visitor, sort of newish, would you just raise your hand and hold it up for just a second, if you're willing? Oh my goodness. We warmly welcome you and all souls. Be friendly to these folks, yes. You may be in town for a number of reasons, but somehow you have circled to this place today. And we welcome you on Zoom, all those who come from across the country and really often in other countries around the world. Summertime is here in the northern Earth hemisphere, and the solstice approaches. We have a beautiful plan for some creative summer collaboration, and I hope that you will play with us. We have dynamic summer religious education offerings for children and youth of all ages, all summer. Kindergarten and up will experience a summer of spiritual practices, including drumming, meditation, knitting, and more. Schedule is on the RE webpage, Religious Education webpage, and you meet in the gym downstairs. Those in preschool and nursery will explore nature themes and our interconnected web of life, which is in room 5, also downstairs for the future. Volunteers are needed to be in and play with both groups. You sign up on the Religious Education webpage. And really, I wish I could sign up, but I have this day job, so it sounds good. After the service, there is online coffee hour socializing with Gary Penn, our membership director. And then today, you may come to Pierce Hall, which is out these doors, for some good food and historical displays from yesterday's celebration of life for Brian Barger. These very beautiful flower arrangements were also given by the family. Next Sunday, June 26th, is a day to do something different, so consider trying it out. There is an ad in the order of service. It's the annual gathering week for General Assembly of our denomination, the Unitarian Universalist Association. And in Portland, Oregon, on this coming Thursday, the Reverend Bill Sinkford, who will be our transitional minister next year, and the First Unitarian Portland worship team will convene GA with a rousing service on the good news of Unitarian Universalism. And so next Sunday, we are going to show that Thursday service here in the monitors. It's a shorter service, and then dialogue together. So our executive director, Tracy Hughes Trotter, who is at the desk today, and I will hear more about your desires for liberating faith and a congregation that transforms. We'll be here in the sanctuary, regular time, next Sunday. On the following Sunday, July 3rd, on the last page of the order of service is a whole slew of announcements for the summer, but we are the grand conveners of Preaching Along the Potomac, where 9 UU congregations in the region are doing worship together in July. Okay, this never happens. So we have herded the cats, and we're the kickoff site in hospitality on July 3rd. There will be a pickup choir that anyone can pop into at 9 a.m. that day, led by Jen Heyman. There will be RE spiritual practices if you want to go to the gym and juggle. And our preacher will be Reverend Rob Keithan, pondering the depth of the July 4 weekend in a time of turmoil and transformation. So we gather once again with our siblings in Unitarian Universalism online and live on Sunday, July 3rd. We have 2 celebrations to name this morning as we move to our congregational joys and concerns. Please know that you can be in touch with the ministry team in a confidential email at congcare@allsouls.ws at any time. We are delighted to announce that the Reverend Kathleen Rollens has accepted a position to serve as the interim senior minister at Unity Unitarian in St. Paul, Minnesota, for the upcoming church year with a possible year 2. We wish Kathleen well, and we send prayers to our fellow UU congregation that is experiencing several difficult transitions right now. We celebrate the life of Brian Barger, whose memorial yesterday was a moving tribute and inspiration. We don't always have the space to name a few things, but I would like to today. Brian was so many beautiful facets: a devoted father, spouse, and uncle whose fierce love was appreciated deeply. He was a relentless investigative reporter for the Washington Post and CNN, among others, and there's information in Pierce Hall. He was a passionate founder of a border rape crisis center, which was the first in Mexico in Ciudad Juarez, a lover of bluegrass music, a beloved member of the All Souls Migrant Solidarity Team. And we are thinking of his spouse, Teodor, his daughter, Karina, and all extended family and friends today. And now your names and situations spoken aloud into this space or shared in the chat online, that we might hold them in this sacred circle. Would you pray or meditate with me, as is your practice? Holy creative force, spirit of life, we celebrate inner and outer true north, the ability to utterly break out of the box, our human capacity to hold deep vision even when everything seems to diminish who we were meant to be. We honor the enduring legacies of the African diaspora, the many generations enslaved on multiple continents by cruel oppressors who could not or would not see greatness in different cultures. We remember on Juneteenth those Texas slaves on the 19th of June, 1865, who heard a liberating message of emancipation, one still unfolding now in 2022. We lament that the weight of freedom has been so slow and painful, that our country and our planet ache to live towards great ideals and moral integrity. And we celebrate that Juneteenth has also been a defiantly joyful celebration of food and family and heritage in the very face of the worst loss. May we never lose this freedom trail, the Polaris star, which calls us to liberation for all. Not some vague concept which costs us nothing, but true solidarity in concrete relationships and clear action for transformation. And may it be so. Blessed be. Amen.
Amen. Greetings all here in the sanctuary and on Zoom. Our reading today is an excerpt from the TED Talk of sociologist Brené Brown on the topic of shame. It's an interesting thing that I had to admit to myself that I'm now at the point in my life where TED Talks on shame are really interesting to me. But here we are. So in that, and she's quite funny in addition to having a very important analysis. She says, shame is an epidemic in our culture, and to get out from underneath it, we have to understand how it affects us and how it affects the way we're parenting, the way we're working, the way we're looking at each other. If we're going to find our way back to each other, we have to understand and know empathy, because empathy is the antidote to shame. If you put shame in a petri dish It needs three things to grow exponentially: secrecy, silence, and judgment. If you put the same amount in a petri dish and douse it with empathy, it cannot survive. There's so many things happening and intersecting this weekend. It's Pride Month. It was the Poor People's Campaign March yesterday. It's Father's Day. It's Juneteenth. And so it seemed to me, with all of these things intersecting, it was an important time to reflect on the norms and expectations that shape our behavior and how and why we break out of boxes. Like a lot of things in our lives, I think breaking out is easier to do when we've seen other people do it. And so I'll start with a story that has stuck in my mind for many years. It might not have been otherwise significant, but the reason I was at this restaurant, the Rooftop of Perry's in Adams Morgan, was one of the first times that I signed a marriage license for a couple. And it was for two women friends of ours. And as a religious leader, it felt like I was doing at least a little bit to compensate for so much wrong done to LGBT people by religion. Anyhow, partway through that meal, it started to rain. And so all the people up there got up and moved and huddled under an awning, except two women who were dining together. They just put up their umbrellas and kept eating. Nice adaptation, I thought. That never would have occurred to me. But after a few minutes, they took it a step further. I happened to be looking exactly at them when they did. They both looked at each other, shrugged, and then they just closed their umbrellas, put them down, and kept eating in the rain. And all of us standing under that awning cheered for them. It was not a grand act of rebellion. Their actions didn't change any systems or culture, but it did, in the span of a few seconds, transform a crowd of complete strangers into a group of people rooting for those who had chosen to defy expectations. Now, in this case, the breaking out of boxes was spur of the moment, and it happened in a temporary rather than an ongoing community. So the question I bring to us is, what would it look like for us as a congregation to be a place where we break out of boxes in both an intentional and an ongoing way? Now, I think we're all part of this congregation because we're committed to this concept to some extent. Unitarianism and Universalism were both created in the early 1800s specifically as a rejection of the dominant culture. And though strong, we continue as a minority religion today. So the very fact of our being here signifies our willingness to be different. But what does it look like to lean into this? A good starting point, which is common to most work like this, is to figure out how we're being shaped by the dominant culture in the first place. Once you can see what's in the air around you, it's much easier to make different choices. Now, there's 1,000 directions we could go with this, but I want to come back to the Brene Brown piece, which we used recently in the class on reproductive justice that's happening now at All Souls. Now, what Brown says is framed in binary gender terms because that's how it's organized culturally. I and we as a congregation affirm a much broader range of genders, of course. She starts by differentiating shame and guilt. Guilt is a sense that you've done something wrong. Shame is a sense that you are wrong. Guilt, she says, is actually a healthy behavior because it helps you address responsibility or take responsibility and address problems. And this is what she says in her talk. Here's what you need to know. Shame is highly, highly correlated with addiction, depression, violence, aggression, bullying, suicide, eating disorders. And here's what you even need to know more. Guilt inversely correlates with those things. The ability to hold something we've done or failed to do up against who we want to be is incredibly adaptive. It's uncomfortable, but it's adaptive. She goes on to say that shame is absolutely organized by gender, according to the dominant culture's gender roles. For women, shame manifests as, quote, do it all perfectly and never let them see you sweat. Shame for women is a web of unattainable, conflicting, competing expectations about who we're supposed to be, and it's a straitjacket. For men, shame is not a bunch of competing, conflicting expectations. Shame is one. Do not be perceived as weak. Of course, her research does not universally apply to everyone. There are many other factors involved, but it's helpful to remind ourselves of how the dominant culture operates. And I think her analysis and antidotes are more universal. Empathy. Empathy is the key to eliminating shame. Now, however, there is a clear and simple precondition for empathy, which the dominant culture, and to some extent even our congregational culture, makes difficult. We have to know each other's stories. In order to give someone empathy, you have to know their story. And in order to receive empathy, someone has to know your story. And remember, we're talking about shame. We're talking about breaking out of the unconscious constraints of our psyche and action. So when I say that we need to know each other's stories, I mean opening up with a level of risk and vulnerability that is likely both uncommon and uncomfortable. Now, for some of us, I think, especially people with marginalized identities, it might be very easy to be in touch with your own story. Society may remind you of it on a daily basis. For others, especially those with dominant identities, it might take some work. In an introduction to anti-racism for white people class that Jennifer Langer-Smith and I lead here, a major focus is on cultivating positive white identity. But before you can do that, you have to know how you were shaped. You have to understand your own story. Now, I know that many of you, like me, are deeply concerned about the upcoming Supreme Court decision that will likely roll back the legal protections of Roe v. Wade. I want to say a little about that because it's directly related to what I'm talking about. So by looking at the overall picture, we know that the extreme right wing's primary goal is not reducing abortion. Why? Because they oppose all the scientifically sound and proven policies that do that reduce the need. Comprehensive sexuality education, access to effective birth control, access to health insurance, funding for childcare. No, the right wing's goal is to impose their morality on everyone. They actively want people to feel shame for any identities and behaviors that are outside of the norms they establish. And whenever we police each other, we are doing their work for them. While it may be tempting to launch into a rapid response after the Dobbs decision is announced, I want to share the perspective that is being articulated by Black-led reproductive justice organizations, as well as Sacred, the Spiritual Alliance of Communities for Reproductive Dignity, a new national faith-based organization that All Souls and I are helping to launch. It is to name and admit clearly that this is not a situation where rapid response will meet the need. This is a situation where deep, long-lasting commitment is needed. We got to this place because the far right has been working to overturn Roe for nearly 50 years. Now, part of the work we need to do is political advocacy and organizing, yes. But rather than doing an action immediately after the decision, which so many other groups are doing, All Souls is going to host an education and organizing event in mid-July about working for reproductive justice, about capacity for the long haul. We're already doing a lot. We have plans to do more, and we could use more people who are willing to commit to leadership. So stay tuned for that meeting. But there is important internal work that we must do as well. We need to stop policing ourselves and each other. And I think for us, maybe it's not so much in terms of active judgment, but in terms of breaking the silence on vulnerable topics. We need to make previously untalked about topics things that we talk about. Now, in the reproductive justice arena, more and more clergy are talking openly about their abortion stories from the pulpit. That's not part of my journey, but infertility is. My wife and I have children because of assisted reproductive technologies and a sperm donor, and because we had the financial resources to pay the exorbitant cost, even though it wasn't covered by our health insurance. The ability to have the children you want is also a reproductive justice issue. Now, at the virtual launch for Sacred in January, Charisse Scott, the founder and CEO of a reproductive justice organization in Memphis called Sister Reach, put out a challenge. It was relevant for everyone, but particularly directed at the white people participating. She challenged us to get in touch with our own reproductive justice story. That was one way we could ensure that we were doing the work accountably, being honest about our own healing, rather than doing it on behalf of other people in a patronizing way. And I think that same dynamic is incredibly relevant for men. So often work around sexual and reproductive health has been framed as a women's issue. While there are some ways that that is certainly true, it also makes it seem like men don't benefit from or need sexual and reproductive health care for themselves. And let's just keep that analysis going. Yes, women need to heal from sexism. Transgender people need to heal from transphobia, but men need to heal from patriarchy also. The expectations of masculinity from the dominant culture are toxic. But simply knowing that is not enough, and nor is acting on it just as an individual, because toxic masculinity is not an individualistic problem. It is a communal problem that requires a communal response. In this case, men need to talk to other men in ways that are significantly deeper and more vulnerable than the cultural norm. So I have this long-standing belief that the world gets a little bit better every single time someone decides to break out of a box. Every time someone bucks a cultural norm, quits a job that they dislike, ends a relationship that's not working for them, every little step makes our world a better place. And as Louise said, we celebrated the life of Brian Barger yesterday. And I want to say, I got to know Brian, and he embodies so much of what I am talking about. And folks may not know, because he was so humble, you'll find out more, that he was one of the two journalists that broke the Iran-Contra story. Peter Bergen from CNN was here yesterday, and he said that was the largest story in the world at the time. And Brian had been a journalist in so many different places, and as Louise mentioned, he got to a point where he realized that he was tired of parachuting into troubled situations, reporting on them, and leaving. And after working with so many women in Juarez, in Mexico, who were disappeared, who had experienced horrific violence, he decided to leave his career as a journalist, literally at the top of his game, to, with Esther Chavez, found an organization to provide services to women in Juarez. And that clinic has now served, or that organization has now served and supported more than 100,000 women. So many of us may not be at the place that we get to make impacts that broad. And regardless of our genders, our gender identities, there's some aspect of us that needs healing from shame, that needs to bust out of the constraints, that needs to do something different. It brings to mind what is sometimes cited as a Chinese proverb, which may or may not be true, which is that if you wait for a roast duck to fly into your mouth, you're going to wait a very long time. In other words, we can't wait for the perfect moment to find us by accident. We need to push ourselves to proactively share. Your shame may be along the lines of some of the common themes I shared today. It may be completely different. You are all the experts on your own stories. But whoever you are, whatever shame and constraint you face, I encourage you to make a concrete commitment to moving beyond it. Think about what part of your story you want to tell, you need to tell. And choose at least one person that you know in your life that you want to tell it to, that you want to risk opening up to. I encourage you to ask for consent first, as it's important for people to be prepared to hear something like that. But most of the time, I think if you risk vulnerability, people will reciprocate in kind. I'll close with a final story. I'm a biker, albeit a fair weather one. So on nice days, I ride my bike to work, here at the church, or to do errands in the neighborhood. One lovely day this past spring, I was most of the way home from doing a short errand. I was making a turn from one of the fairly flat cross streets in Brookland, where I live, up onto a little section of hill. I wasn't particularly tired because it was a fairly short ride, nor was I in a hurry. As I rounded the corner at a leisurely pace, I could tell that a car that had been directly beside me had not only turned with me, but was driving slowly right up the hill beside me. It definitely felt odd, so I turned to look. It was an ordinary car, a common car. Its driver was a 30-something black man. As soon as our eyes met, a big smile came across his face, and he started yelling, "You can do it, you can do it, go, go, go." He thought I was tired, so he slowed down just to cheer me on. Even though I wasn't and had nowhere to be, it seemed only fair that I respond, so I took off the hill as fast as I could. Moments later, he honked, and I got the sense that he was turning away, so I just gave him a backwards wave over my head and kept going. This, friends, is my dream for us. Not only do I want us to break out of our own boxes, I want us to be cheerleaders for each other, both for the people we know and for the people we don't. So let's do that. Let's be honest about our own stories and our own need for healing, whatever those are. Let's share them with each other, be cheerleaders for each other, and break out of our boxes together. May it be so.
May I suggest one more loud, resounding amen to Reverend Kivens? That was awesome. This is a day which we have been given, so rejoice in it. Be glad. And from that gladness, we give of ourselves, our love, our time, our talent, our treasure. So let an offering now be taken to support and sustain this beloved community. If you are on Zoom today, there is a link in the chat window that will direct you to the All Souls online giving page. You may also text ASCU to the number 73256 to make your offering. Thank you for your generosity.
Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing our closing hymn.
Before the words of our benediction, I'd like to invite Eileen and Jennifer to come up here with a special presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Camera folks, in-person folks, it's beautiful to be with you this morning, as always. Thankful for the beautiful sermon, Rob. We are here in this moment to offer our own nature, music, beloved benediction, and gifts to Jen Heyman, our music minister, and Rochelle Rice, our associate director of music, for all That's right. Amen. Amen to them both and to all of you for all that they have done for so many years for this congregation, but in particular for the last 2.5 years. As Unitarians, we place a lot often on the spoken word, on the written word. But those of us who have traveled through this congregation or live within it know that in this place, in this Unitarian congregation, music transforms everything we do. That has a long tradition here, but in the last decade, this has been because of Jen and Rochelle and all of the amazing musicians that they bring into this space, all of the challenges that they bring to us as a choir, and the transformative moments that they bring to this congregation and the world beyond, now that we're on YouTube. So we want to thank you for all the many blessings that you give us all the time. And may we bless you all back a little bit with the love that we give to you. Rochelle. There's two. There are two. Don't forget to open. You do it.
So very well deserved, colleagues. Go forth with love for yourself and for others, and go forth in liberation for yourself and for others. Amen.
Thank you all so much. For our benediction today, I just want to let you know that the choir might be a little up close and personal. And I hope that if a choir person approaches you, that you will return some of their energy back to them with a smile, with a touch, with a glance of knowing and appreciation. Thank you all.